Welcome to Wine Soundtrack USA. Listen to the passion with which producers narrate their winery and their world. In 30 answers, discover their stories, personalities, and passions.
Hello, friends and listeners of Wine Soundtrack. This is Allison Levine, and today I am sitting in the Suisun Valley in Northern California, just outside of Napa, and I am with Sathirapongsasuti, who is the co-owner and assistant winemaker at Sunset Cellars in the Suisun Wine Co-op, which he'll explain. But this is really fascinating because Fa, in case you didn't get from the last name, is actually from Thailand. And so I'm really excited to get to know Fa, have you guys get to know him, but also kind of learn about how someone from Thailand ended up here. So Fa, let's get started with, tell us about Sunset Cellars and the Suisun Wine Co-op.
Right. Sunset Cellars is a winery started in 1997 by Doug and Katsuko Sparks in their garage in the Sunset District of San Francisco. Therefore, the name. Hence the name. That's exactly right. And although you couldn't see me right now, but I'm 1997. I think that was before I was legally able to drink. So I certainly was not part of the founding team, but I'm part of the second generation owner and winemaker of the winery. And Sunset Cellars is one of those classic California winery that got started in the early 90s. Ducks and Cusco really cut their teeth drinking the classic California greatest wine then. So our style, we define our style of articulated as Zen Zin style. And the Zen Zin, I think it's kind of fun because Zen, like the Zen Buddhism, speaks a bit to Cusco's Japanese background and our connection to Japan, but also our idea that we should allow the wine to express itself, the grape to express itself fully. And we don't try to force it into a form or an idea that we have for it, and we listen to the wine of what it likes to be. And I really learned this from working with Cusco and Doc and really picking decisions and making wine in the vineyard and in the winery. When we pick decisions, for example, we pick the wine, the grape at this peak ripeness, and they say there's no point if there's no flavor in the grape, right? And then once we get the grape into the cellar, we listen to the grape of what it wants to be. Does it want to be a big wine? Does it want to be a small wine? Does it want to be a high acid wine? And we try to help it be the best it can be. And that also translates into practice, like we don't use new oak almost at all. So we use all neutral French oak. We don't do things to a schedule. It's not like 3 months has passed, we have to rack something. If the wine doesn't need racking, it doesn't need racking. It doesn't need any work to it. We just let it be.
So Sunset Cellars, do you have your own land? Are you sourcing from your own vineyards? Or are you also buying fruit? Is it a combination? What is the situation with the grape access?
It's a combination. So at the start, when they were in San Francisco, obviously, they have long-term relationship now with growers in many places. Some of them are in Dry Creek Valley, so the Teldeschi vineyards, we work with them for the long time, so we make Zinfandel, Petit Syrah from that, but also Suisun Valley. And that's really why we find ourselves here, and we moved to our cellar here in 2007, because we find ourselves working with a lot of fruit here and enjoying it.
And do you own any vineyards?
Yes, we do. So we, starting in 2012, we actually manage one small 2 acres vineyard.
2 acres.
It's very cute. But that's because we love Barbera. Barbera has been one of the flagship wines we made since 1998. And the vineyard that we have been working with in Napa Valley was going to get grafted over with, you guess it, Cabernet, right? So, but we love that clone of the Barbera so much that we want, and we work with the vineyard manager who lived there, who loved the grape. So we clone that vineyard vine to vine over in the Green Valley area, which is right next to Suisun here.
Very cool. So you have 2 acres plus you're buying fruit. And what are all the grapes that you're working with for your wines?
Right. So we actually love working with heritage California grapes like Zinfandel. We articulate as Zen Zin. Really, Zinfandel is a thing. Petit Syrah as well. We work with Petit Syrah from both Dry Creek Valley and here in Suisun. Carignan, Chabono. But they will also do international grape like Syrah, Cabernet Sauvignon, and occasional white wines.
Such as?
Such as Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc.
Okay. And what's your total case production?
So about just shy of 1,000.
And are your wines only available in the tasting room, direct to consumer? Can you ship around the country? How can people find your wines?
Right. So it's all direct to consumer. We don't use distribution right now, so you can buy them online, or you can come visit us at Suisun Valley Wine Co-op.
Well, before we get into that a little more, let's get to know you. So you grew up in Bangkok, Thailand. I'm wondering, what's your first memory relevant to wine?
Well, the very first memory relevant to wine, not fine wine.
No, just
right,
wine.
Right. Was probably at teenage years, and my parents wouldn't like to hear this. But I went on a trip with a group of friends, and we wanted to get something to drink because I thought that was fun. I went to 7-Eleven, and I think the only wine option had available is wine cooler, which is chillable red wine, slightly sweet. That's not very memorable then, but I remember sneaking in and buying it and feel so naughty doing that.
And that was before you were in the U.S.
That was before I was in the U.S., right? But perhaps more relevant first memory of good wine would be here. Actually, I cut my teeth drinking wine here at Suisun Valley Wine Co-op about maybe 10, 15 years ago now, when we first came here. And that was 2008 Afterglow Cabernet Sauvignon that we have.
So obviously, a little more, you cut your teeth, and now you've been drinking wine and you like to explore wine. I know we've been talking, and you have a real passion and excitement for learning, which is fantastic in this industry. I'm curious if there is another wine that was one of those aha moments from your own winery, from somewhere locally, or from somewhere else in the world. What was that wine and what was the occasion?
I think there are two of them.
Okay.
So following on to that 2008 Cabernet I was just talking about, I think 2008, if people live here or know the vintages, was one of fire. It's similar to 17, I think, but that fire was really close here to Suisun. So we could taste smoke in that 2008 Cabernet. And that was an aha moment. It was like, oh my God, you can actually tell a story, a deep story of a place and time. And that really got me hooked into that. Second one is at Robert Mondavi. We went to a tour, and at the end of that tour, they sat us down with a food and wine pairing, take a sip of Cabernet, take a bite of tri-tip steak, I think, and take a sip of Cabernet again. And that's just like, oh my God, food and wine can make food and wine taste better.
So a couple aha moments, and you have many more to come, I can promise you. Keep tasting, you'll keep having them. So if we come into your home, what sort of wines would we find? Are you collecting any wine? Are you exploring any particular wine regions right now, or are you really focused on your local wines?
Well, I have too many wines, so it's kind of overwhelming when you come to my house. I think the first thing people say is like, so many wines. I have so many racks, and I think last I count was close to 500 bottles, a lot. And because I approached it first, I did CMS Certified Sommelier exam and training, so I really kind of broadened my application in the wine world, right? So I tried to at least collect number of bottles from each of the style and regions, so that when I have cooked something, I can reach out for something always. So yes.
So of those 500 wines, what's in there? You don't have to name every wine, but what countries, what grapes would we find?
Yeah, I mean, I have a section for Cabernet, like one whole rack for Cabernet, one whole rack for Pinot Noir. So those two are probably ones that I drink or have the most of. And then like maybe one section for all things Europeans, right? So medium body red wines from Rioja. Now, more fun is that I'm a good friend with a friend from graduate school. I went to a PhD doing biostatistics with. She is a daughter of a winemaker in Rioja. So I've been exploring and learning a lot about Tempranillo and Rioja wine in Spain in general.
Very cool. Very cool. So, do you think there's a such thing? I mean, you're learning about wine, you've studied wine, you're practicing your drinking, and now working in the vineyard. Do you think there's a such thing as a perfect variety?
No. Right.
Fair enough.
Right. I mean, it's always an occasion perfect for the occasion, right? But also the concept of perfect is a fleeting one in Japan. Perfection is not something to achieve, but something to strive toward.
I like that. We're going to get some good, thoughtful comments from you today. So, how do you approach wine critics and scores? I mean, especially coming into this as a wine drinker and with a PhD in statistics, you're very structured and logical. I'm wondering how you approach wine critics and scores when it comes to wine.
Right. I think wine critic and scores are useful as a representation of the critique's palate and preferences, right? And I use them as a consumer when I go to a store and I try to buy something I don't know nothing about. It's helpful to know that somebody think is decent enough to get a 90 score. But I leave it at that, right? The difference between 89, 91, 92, 93, 94, like those fine grains differences are probably not that meaningful. And also from a producer side point of view, what I like might not be the same as what they like. And we like our customer to explore what they themselves like as well.
So as a consumer, red, white, or rosé?
Red.
Still or sparkling?
That's very unfair. But I reach out for sparkling a lot these days.
For sparkling, champagne or domestic or from somewhere else?
Champagne has a special place, right? It's nothing quite like it. Though I've been loving and engaging in cava.
So sparkling wine in general, you're pretty open to.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that one of your aha moments was a food and wine pairing. And, I think you also mentioned that of your 500 or so bottles of wine at home, that you have selections, so based on what you're cooking, that you can pull a bottle of wine. So how do you approach food and wine pairing? It's a really interesting thing. Like, do you follow rules of white wine and fish and red wine with meat, or do you look at sweet with spice, or do you have a different approach? And what would you suggest?
I think the rule I like to follow are two things: weight. I was trying to match the weight of wine and the weight of food, but also second one is pairing the wine with sauce, not the meat per se. And that I find that to be a more successful pairing than just the basic white, red with meat, white with fish, right? But at the same time, I like to explore and discover new unexpected pairings. And I cook a lot of Asian dishes from all over Asia. And so a lot of the time the rules don't really apply correctly, and people don't have great recommendations on what to do with a particular, fried fish dish from Thailand. So I kind of have to invent that on my own.
And what do you kind of lean towards? Have you found a pairing that you really like?
Rosé actually has been one of the greatest sort of broad pairing that work with pretty much anything, as well as sparkling wine, I suppose.
Oh, I love a crispy fried fish from Thailand. Wow, delicious. So, for somebody who hasn't had the pleasure to taste the wines of Sunset Cellars yet, what do you think they're missing out on?
They're missing out on a true rustic California style of wine that is very unapologetic in its fruit character and what the land and the weather can give you. We're not bound by alcohol limit even, right, or any particular styles. So we only bound by what the land can give us. So if space aliens were to land on your property or walk into your co-op, which of your wines would you want to welcome them with? So, well, first of all, I have to say that I myself am an alien, according to the U.S. government. Yes. But I'm talking about space aliens. I see. I was going to go with, I'm actually, my visa, the name of the visa I'm holding is called Alien with Extraordinary Ability. Ooh. So you have to submit this giant application to show that you should keep me here. But that being said, I think I would probably pour them a rosé. Because we don't know what a space alien drink or eat or what the palate is like. And like I mentioned before, rosé, what I found is this pair with basically a lot of things. And we use that as a conversation starter. Right, let's see where it goes, and you can go to red or white after that.
I like that. And you make a rosé of what? What grape do you use?
Pinot Noir.
Delicious. Delicious. So you're learning now to be in the vineyard. You're now assistant winemaker and everything. How familiar are you with your vines? Are you spending time in the vineyard, and have you gotten to know them on an intimate level, talking to them? And do they tell you their story, and do you tell them that yours? Or what about in the cellar? Do you talk to the barrels, or what do you do?
Right. If you are a friend of mine, you would know that I tend to speak to things, to objects. Like, when I leave a house or a home or a place, I would say goodbye to them sometimes. So naturally, I do speak to vines and oak and oak barrels. It's actually a fun time to walk the vineyard, especially mid-season or later in the season where things are happening. And last year, some growers would allow us to pick particular rows to pick our grape from. So I had a lot of fun kind of getting to know each of the rows of the vineyards that we work with.
Are you establishing any sort of rituals to do at the start of harvest?
Not quite yet. I mean, other than walk in the vineyard and actually eat a lot of grapes.
And now, remind me, you have a PhD in
biostatistics.
Biostatistics, okay.
I study genetics, so the area of research that I'm focusing on is actually human genetics, studying what genes and mutations that make us different.
And do you ever think of applying that skill to grapes and understanding the genetics of grapes?
Certainly I have, and data science is what I really do. And this year, when I went to Unified Symposium, which is an academic conference in the industry, there was a presentation on terroir, and there's this 5 years long study done by UC Davis that has 30 vineyard sites all across the coast, and they were presenting some data, like some clustering data, to show that Oregon really is different from California. And I looked at that data set and it's like, I could analyze that better. So I like to do that. If I can do a second PhD, it would be in enology.
Very cool. I think you should do that. So I don't know if you get a little superstitious or anything like that, but some people read tea leaves at the bottom of a cup in order to predict the future. If you could read the bottom of a red wine glass, what would you want it to tell you?
Red wine glass. Well, if there's settlement, that means there's some aged wines, and I probably have some great wines coming. I hope that it tells me that I open it too early and that I still have a few more bottles to open.
So when you were little, what did you want to be when you grew up?
My dad is a doctor, so I think I'd say that I wanted to be a doctor.
And then I just find this fascinating, but you also are an ordained monk, right?
Yes, I am. So, and it's slightly at odds with the wine career, because in Buddhism, one of the 5 precepts is you shall not imbibe in alcoholic drinks, and here I am. So my parents may or may not endorse this so much. I don't tell them everything I do here. I leave it at I'm helping an elderly couple doing that project. But
moderation is important, right?
Exactly. I think moderate, right. And my second excuse is that in Zen Buddhism, actually drinking in moderation is okay. In Japan, what really convinced me to start drinking more was the culture of monks and priests in Japan enjoying sake, and as a way to commune with the gods.
Aha. It's a fascinating aspect of your life. I think that's really interesting. So when you're not working, how do you like to spend your free time?
Well, I mean, these days I don't really have a lot of free times.
What?
I know, right? Between job as a scientist and job as winemakers, I basically take all of it, and I run social media as well. So I think of my social media life, promoting Sunset Cellars and also promoting Suzune Valley Wine Co-op as my enjoyment time, my free time. I cook a lot, and also that kind of got incorporated into work, right? So the line between work and life blurs a little bit.
Yeah, that's tough when you're in the wine industry. The line is very blurred when it's fun and when it's work.
Right, and I think that's fine. I'm fine with that. So long as, I mean, there's a level of expectation and stress that usually make hobby when turned into a job less fun. So I keep some of the work, quote unquote work I do, like social media. There's not a lot of people expecting that I have to post every day. It's not like I'm being paid to do so. So I'm doing it when I want to and when I have fun doing it.
Fantastic. So if you were planning for you and your partner a romantic evening, what sort of wines get opened on a romantic evening? What sets the mood?
Ooh, it would probably have to be our 2008 old vine Zinfandel Sunset Cellars, because that 2008 was the year we met, and I got that idea a few years later to buy like 2 cases of that wine and open one a year to see how it evolved, like a relationship.
And is the wine evolving as well as your relationship?
It was sweet, and it's still sweet.
So when you think about how you like to live your life, and obviously your teachings and your studies of being a monk have taught you a lot. There's been a lot of advice given to you and ingrained in you. Is there a particular piece of advice you like to live your life by, or try to apply to your work, or in any aspect that is something you carry with you? And if so, what is it, and where did you get this piece of advice?
I think one of the best pieces of advice is around expectation. It's that you cannot be disappointed if you don't have any expectation. And I think this really plays well with the winemaking philosophies of, you work with what you have and you do the best, and you react to what the situation. So Zen Zin, we know we kind of have an idea of what it might be because we worked with a vineyard before, but if the year give us a lighter wine, that is fine, and we will pass that along and tell the story to our customers and say, isn't that great that wines are different every year?
And if you could give our listeners some advice, what would you give them? What would you say?
I think the concept of moderation is a very good one, right? So I think the walking the middle path and not going too far on one end or the other, and just kind of be centered and God, this is hard. Sorry.
That's okay.
Gonna have to cut that out because I have zero idea what to say.
We can skip that question.
That
Don't
was
worry.
Unexpected. Sorry.
Of course, it's all unexpected.
Appreciate that.
Let's skip that question.
Yeah, let's skip that for now. Maybe if I come up with something different.
No, we're past. So when you look back at your career, and I mean, you have a day job, and obviously now you're involved you have 2 jobs. But when you look back at your entire career to date, what would you say is one of your proudest achievements?
Well, I think the ability, I'm just thinking about my wine career particularly, and I was really proud. There was a few moments when I introduced wine to someone and they had their aha moment or their epiphany moment. And it's such a special moment to me. I still remember and talk about those moments all the time. And I think it's such an honor to turn it on to someone.
Beautiful. So complete this sentence for me. A table without wine is like?
An opportunity to open the bottle.
And now I want you to imagine a scenario. We're sitting at a big table. We've got your wines. The Sunset Cellar wines are on the table. If there was anyone from any walk of life, living or deceased, famous or not famous, who would you want to be drinking a bottle of Sunset Cellars? Who would you want to share a bottle with?
Oh, there are a few, but one that I would really like to, but may or may not happen, is my parents. You know, they don't really drink because of religion, and but I would love for one day to sit them down and say, like, you know, this is something I really care about. Other than them, maybe a more famous person perhaps would be Tyrion Lannister, if you know. This is from Game of Thrones, a character in Game of Thrones that I admire and adore. His most famous quote is, you know, "I drink and I know things."
So, we're almost to the end. You're doing well. I know you've done a little preparation by knowing my questions, but going to a deserted island, what 3 wines would you take with you?
Well, I actually have clarifying questions around that.
Okay.
Is it a vacation, or is it a, like, I got pushed to have to be there and imprisoned there?
No, this is your island. It's whatever you want it to be. So it should be the 3 wines you'd want to have, assuming you couldn't have anything else.
I see. Do I have refrigerating?
Sure.
Okay, perfect. So this is a vacation. So I would probably pack a Pinot Noir, a little lighter bodied Pinot.
From anywhere in particular?
Probably from Oregon.
Okay.
I kind of really like Willamette Valley, especially the cooler year like 2010 or 11. Okay. They don't come around much anymore. And a light kind of acid-driven Chardonnay, probably maybe from Chablis. Mm-hmm. And then our Barbera, our aged Barbera.
From the Sassoon Valley.
From Sassoon Valley.
Fantastic. Well, now you know it's time to play that little game where we pair wine with music. Wow. Now, again, this can be a genre, it can be a musician, a song, and you don't know what wines I'm going to pick. So this is where you couldn't prep. But let's start with your rosé of Pinot Noir.
Beach music. So there's this genre of electronic music I love called beach, like EDM.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then your Petite Syrah.
Ooh, Petite Syrah. I think of Petite Syrah as like a very country thing. It's like we got one of my loved Petite Syrah from Dry Creek. So a more feminine country music like Dolly Parton, Jolene.
And your Old Vine Zin that you're getting from Dry Creek.
Old Vine Zin, again country, but now this time would be more like the Zac Brown type style.
Okay. And I tried the other day your Barbera. I was able to try both a 20-year-old one as well as a 10-year-old one. Your Barbera.
Barbera, acid jazz.
Acid jazz. Okay.
I mean, it's, the name, right? And Barbera is very acid driven, and that's how we like to make our Barbera.
Fantastic. Well, you did a good job. I hope you weren't too shocked by that. But Paul, one more question. You're loving to explore wines. You've got a lot of wines at home, and you're a good student of wine. What is one wine region at the top of your list that you want to go explore?
Italy. Yeah, Piedmont. Because we make so much Barbera. I feel like I need to go see how they do it in the homeland.
Fantastic. Well, I think you should plan that. And for people who want to plan a trip here and come visit, how can they find you, Sassoon Wine Co-op and Sunset Cellars?
Yes. So give us a ring. Our contact information is on our website, SassoonValleyWineCoop.com. or you can also contact us through sunsetsellars.com as well. I'm also pretty active on Instagram, so if you find our Instagram account on either Suisun Valley Wine Co-op or Sunset Cellars, I'm usually the voice behind them.
And you have a tasting room that is open when?
Yes, so Suisun Valley Wine Co-op is our tasting room. We taste all of our wine there. It's open Friday through Sunday, 12 noon to 5 p.m.
And people can just walk in, or do they have to make an appointment?
People can just walk in, although if you want to guarantee your spot, an appointment is appreciated.
So if you're heading up to the Napa Valley area, don't forget the Suisun Valley, just on the backside of Napa Valley, just a stone's throw, 15 minutes away. Stop in and then explore the second oldest AVA in California and try some rustic, authentic wines that make no apology at Sunset Cellars. Fa, thank you so much for joining us on Wine Soundtrack.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to a new episode of Wine Soundtrack USA. For details and updates, visit our website, winesoundtrack.com.